Let her speak. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. I would like to avoid any trouble. This is a day of unity for us. I want us to be happy. All right,
it's up to the gay people. What do you want to do?
Listen, we don't know what you want. Now, do you want these people to speak? Wait a minute. Wait, please wait. Please wait. Will the people who want it say yes? That's the end of the conversation. She is speaking. I said the same thing. You're right. Hi, lady. Y'all better quiet down. Nothing. I've been trying to get up here all day for your gay brothers and your gay sisters in jail. They're writing me every motherfucking week and ask for your help. And you all don't do a goddamn thing for them. Have you ever been beaten up and raped in jail? Now think about it. They've been beaten up and raped after they haven't spent much of their money in jail to get their cell phones and try to get their sex change. The women have tried to fight for their sex changes or to become women of the women's liberation. And they write STAR, not the women's group. They do not write women. They do not write men. They write STAR because we're trying to do something for them. I have been to jail. I have been raped and beaten many times by men, heterosexual men that do not belong in the homosexual shelter. But do you do anything for them? No. You all tell me to go and hide my tail between my legs. I will not no longer put up with this shit. I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all? Think about that. I do not believe in a revolution, but you all do. I believe in the gay power. I believe in us getting our rights, or else I would not be out there fighting for our rights. That's all I wanted to say to your people. If you all want to know about the people that are in jail, and do not forget Bambi Lamore and Dora Marks, Kenny Messner, and other gay people that are in jail, come and see the people at Star House on 12th Street, on 640 East 12th Street, between B and C, apartment 14. The people that are trying to do something for all of us, and not men and women that belong to a white middle class, white club. And that's what you all belong to. Revolution now! Give me a G! Give me an A! Give me a Y! Give me a P! Give me an O! Give me a W! Give me an E! Give me an R! we're going to do it again. Okay. Elena Reed.
What you've just seen took place at a Pride event in 1973. This was activist Sylvia Rivera speaking out after she and Marsha P. Johnson had been reportedly banned for making other gay activists look bad. This was her call to action at a Pride event because she felt that the community had become complacent, had, in 4 short years, accepted what had been achieved since Stonewall and was willing to settle for those achievements. If you aren't familiar with her name, you should be. Sylvia was good friends with Marsha P. Johnson. She was focused on advocacy for those who, in her view, were left behind by the mainstream society and the assimilationist sectors of the gay community. Rivera fought partly for herself for these reasons, but most importantly for the rights of people of color and low-income LGBT people. As someone who suffered from systemic poverty and racism, she used her voice for unity, sharing her stories, pain, and struggles to show her community that they are not alone. She amplified the voices of the most vulnerable members of the gay community: drag queens, homeless youth, gay inmates in prison, and transgender folks. Rivera and Johnson co-founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, or STAR. STAR offered services and advocacy for homeless queer youth and fought for the Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act in New York. SONDA, as it's known, prohibits discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation in employment, housing, public accommodations, education, financial credit, and the exercise of civil rights. Hi, my name is Polly Sue Furmeister, and I'm here with Lindsay Gillette. We're here speaking to you today for the same reasons that Sylvia Rivera spoke to that crowd in 1973, minus the yelling and swearing. We're here to talk with you about how Pride has changed from its origin and how we believe it should change for the future. Lindsay, you're on mute.
Sorry. We chose this video because it's an impassioned cry to Pride organizers. And in the same moment as showing how far we've come, it also shows how far we haven't come as a community. Many of the same issues our community faced then are the same ones that we face today, despite the ability to have public celebrations. Sylvia was a trans woman of color, and I have a feeling that the same plea that she made back in 1973 would be the one that she would feel she would need to make today. That's why.
At the beginning, Pride events were primarily focused on members of our community being proud to be able to be out, to be free to walk the street in a crowd, to be able to publicly declare who they are. At their heart, they were an opportunity for people to come out and come out.
It was a matter of proving our existence at all. How many times have we heard we didn't talk about sex back then, or gay people weren't a thing in my day? But we've always existed, and we've always known that we've existed. And that's why the Stonewall riots and the first days and years of Pride were about. A radical display of our existence, despite social mores, despite societal shame, and despite religious condemnation, forcing people to acknowledge our valid love and lives.
Pride was a risk. Pride was a statement. People looked at us as a threat. We had a voice. We were making an impact. Within a few years, it became increasingly clear that it wasn't enough just to be out. There was, and still is, significant stigma around the queer community. As Pride events evolved, by the 1980s, Pride became an opportunity for demonstration, for activism. Groups such as ACT UP formed in the 80s, and pride marches became as much about protesting as celebrating. It was in-your-face activism. It was a call to action. AIDS was having a devastating effect on our community, and the government and corporations were turning their backs on us.
Every year a Pride celebration takes place, the celebrations have attracted more people to come out as themselves, to engage in a community event that provides a real sense of joy and love in oneself. Over the past 50 plus years, Pride organizers have been instrumental in giving many community members a place to gather, make noise, and above all, feel proud.
Slowly, we made an impact on others. Acceptance of our community increased. Violence against LGBTQIA+ folks decreased. Acceptance among the straight population increased. Some politicians began to be accepting of our community and sympathetic to our views. We no longer risked being arrested simply for taking part in a Pride event.
Over the decades, Pride has been able to expand our visibility within society. We're able to showcase more of our lifestyle, more of our queer culture, and are able to express ourselves more freely in public. We continue to be here, and we continue to get more queer. Our celebrations have grown in number and in size. Millions of people a year gather in the streets to party amongst themselves, as themselves. We have celebrated the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the streets together. We all danced with tears of joy in our eyes the weeks following the federal recognition of marriage equality. We have come so far in society. Pride celebrations are a far cry from the days when activists risked their lives for being public.
We've come so far that now we attract people from outside our community, because where there are people, there is money. Corporations realize that the money they could make sponsoring Pride events now outweighs the risk that they would take from having their name associated with the events.
And it's a true testament to the efforts of our community to be able to attract such attention. Year after year, we presented our community to the world, and at some point, our colorful parades, endless glitter, glistening bodies, dance parties, high heels, and wigs were a progressive and wise thing for companies to attach themselves to. Because our community and prides have grown so much, we naturally provide a basis of consumer for these companies. But as these people providing help to our community, or are they exploiting it? Are we protecting our community's interests and members, or are we exploiting them ourselves?
Pride has become mainstream, and we, glad to take the money from the corporations, love having them. We never stop to look at their financials. We don't want to seem ungrateful to companies who are willing to hand over cash or supply food and drinks for our happy hours. We gladly overlook the fact that 9 of the biggest, most LGBTQ supportive corporations in America each gave $1 million or more to anti-gay politicians in the last election cycle. As long as they put a rainbow in their logo 1 month a year, we eat it up. How long before we're carrying a banner that reads, Amazon presents Northeast Regional Pride, while they continue to mistreat their employees? Slowly but surely, Pride has brought about acceptance of our community. That's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's fabulous to be able to be out in public without fearing for our lives, at least here in the bubble that is the Northeast. But it's a bad thing because we have accepted the role that the community has assigned to us. We take for granted what it took to get where we are today, and we're content without trying to move the needle. We fought hard for the rights we have now, but we seem to be unwilling to fight for more. We have our month, our march, our rainbows, our flags, the blessing of some politicians, and the reluctant permission from others.
We understand that having fun and smiling does give a huge benefit to people, to be in an energetic atmosphere of community and belonging. But what is the main goal of Pride as organizers? It seems to me the main goal has become to expand the size and the monetary gain of our yearly party or parade. If that is the case, then our subsequent consequence is to continue to misaddress our community needs and even be responsible for contributing to our community's negative statistics.
What are we thinking about when we start to plan our Pride? A clever theme? Sponsors? Alcohol? Shows? Performances? Where we can get money and how much of it we can get our hands on.
And these can't be our main priorities because, as we all know, pride is important.
It's important to understand that the way that we celebrate pride today still serves a vital role in the community. Pride gives people the opportunity to come out, to not feel scared, to not feel alone, to be seen, and to be safe. It gives us the opportunity to be happy, to be around others who we can identify with, perhaps for the very first time. We just need to remember that it is not all pride is, nor should it be. As was true when Sylvia Rivera made her impassioned plea in 1973, is still true today, that we aren't doing enough for certain members of our community. What does this mean to us today as pride organizers? How do we celebrate pride today, and how does that honor the original intent of pride?
Since Stonewall, circumstances of community have changed in very good ways. It isn't as difficult for us to exist in honesty, but as a whole, we still struggle as a community in comparison to the general population. Our trans siblings and siblings of color are at many times suffering, especially our young people. Our pride celebrations do a disservice by focusing on a merry experience of a gay white culture. We cannot ignore the issues of our community members face with the presentation of a colorful party. When Pride first began, the organizers wanted to show the world that we existed as a people, and they've accomplished that. So much so that we're here today louder and sparklier than ever. A lot of a sexualized celebratory tradition of Pride was crucial in advancing the need for radical acceptance of our community by the society at large, and our community, by example, has helped advance a healthier relationship with sexuality overall. What do we want to show the world now as organizers? What do we want to show our community? How do we want to use our positions to help better the lives of our community members beyond a week of events, and what needs to change?
We cannot be complacent. We cannot throw a party while people in other marginalized groups are being slaughtered. What message does it send to the homeless, the jobless, the sick, the ostracized when we have a parade down the middle of the street? We're no longer standing up for the causes and people that need us. Pride has become Mardi Gras. Pride has the same amount of social impact as the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
And as Pride organizers, we have a huge responsibility as how others in the world see us, and most importantly, how we see ourselves. Pride is a representation of our community, and at its worst, Pride is a stereotype of our community's worst struggles. With the way our Pride celebrations are run, we need to be honest that we are contributing to the negative factors of our community and negative perspectives towards our community.
Most current Pride celebrations glorify the dysfunction of our community. They promote extremes about body image. They promote alcohol abuse. They promote drug abuse. They promote promiscuity. And they end up damaging mental health instead of building it up.
And it's important because we need to think about what Pride is providing for people. It's where young people and newly out people go to first discover themselves, to learn who they are. I know we are all individuals, but you cannot discredit that a Pride celebration sets up an expectation for people that this is where you should fit in. Amongst the lights and the booze and the party, these are your people and you should be like them. What are we showing them? How many of us can see ourselves or people that we love in the concerning factors that face our community? And when did it start? We think there's room for Pride to change, to provide something different for the community. We ask the question, is bigger of the same always better, or can smaller of something different be more meaningful? Pride needs to be more meaningful for the community. We as organizers need to be more innovative to address the real concerns and needs of our most vulnerable members, and by proxy, the issues that affect us all. We don't want to take away the good time of Pride, but we want Pride to also be an opportunity to nurture and strengthen our community. We have followed a blueprint for 50 years, but we have lost the soul and its meaning. We've gone from marches to parades, from activism to capitalism, and it's time to get back to our roots for what's right for us.
If you think about how to make your pride better, is your only answer how to make your parade bigger? Maybe it's time for us to stop focusing on the parades. Maybe we need to start focusing instead on exactly who the LGBTQIA plus people are in our community. How much do we know about our own demographic? How much time have we put into figuring out what percentage of our population is under 21? How about over 65? We should be doing this kind of work before we begin planning Pride.
It is time to use Pride to show how dynamic and diverse our community is, to show ourselves, our young people, and the world all over, our unending strength and possibilities as humans. And to do that, we must be honest about how we are responsible for projecting onto our community members and how our efforts affect them, and how we need to change to be more positive influence in the future of our community. We have a responsibility to our community because we are largely responsible for the community that is being created.
Take a look at the issues on this slide. Seriously. We'll wait. Are these issues, these struggles specific to your community? Are they specific to the gay community? I think you know the answer. Of course they're not. Are these struggles more applicable to marginalized groups overall? I think you know the answer to that question as clearly as you know the answer to the previous one. Are these things that our community deals with to a higher degree? Or more personally, let me ask you this. Do you know someone who is struggling with any of these? Or maybe, just maybe, some of you who are here today are dealing with some of these issues. What does the community need? What is your community looking for? Community is looking for inclusion, for acceptance, alliances, mental health, shelter, legal protections, employment, connections, and community engagement.
We want to be so bold as to say, if Pride shifts some of its priorities and the way people are exposed to our community and see themselves within our community, many of the struggles that our community face will decrease, even potentially hate crimes. We have power and we are responsible to use our power for good.
What if you could design Pride from a blank sheet of paper? What if you didn't have to have a parade? What would you include? A march on your city hall? A civil rights demonstration? Resources to help community members? A focus on the older LGBT folks? A focus on the younger LGBT folks? Or focus on LGBT families?
We know that some of what we're saying is harsh and judgmental, or might come off as harsh and judgmental, but we want you to know that we wouldn't be here if we didn't care about Pride and the queer community that has been there for us. And I know that many of you people in the audience have been a part of creating those spaces for me as I grew up. I just went off script, but in a short time volunteering with Pride and having that time being primarily dedicated to queer youth, I know that we have two options.
We can focus on how far we've come, or we can focus on how far we need to go.
We have further to go, and we need to fight for all these people in our community, even if we haven't lived their full life experiences. I am not in school, but young people are the future. I'm not trans, but I'm a fierce trans advocate. I'm not Black, but Black Lives Matter and trans Black Lives Matter. We need to be allies to all of our community members, and we need to honor the different struggles within our community.
By looking at Pride, you'd think we'd made it. But the truth is, only some of us have made it. We need to hold up a mirror and see which ones we are.
We only been involved for NERP for a couple of years, and we've been nothing but short of honored to have been involved and have Alan invite us and encourage us to be more active with the group. But when we came to the group 2 years ago, we were actually pretty surprised at the lack of diversity in it. So something we have to be aware of.
The community is changing and it is growing, and it demands diversity and acceptance on many levels. We're at a singular moment in our history. COVID-19 has changed the way we operate. Take this virtual event, for example.
We are re-envisioning the way we communicate and organize. We have had the opportunity to self-reflect, to educate, to demand more from a system that is set against us. But during this time as a country, we have become more polarized than ever. As social progressives fight more doggedly than ever, a conservative backlash is mobilizing with the same determination.
People have begun organizing straight pride marches. U.S. federal law does not specifically include protections against discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. There is no federal statute explicitly addressing employment discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. There is no federal law against discrimination in access to housing based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Just last year, the administration issued a new rule stating that sexual orientation and gender identity are specifically not covered under the anti-discrimination protections of the Affordable Care Act. Right now, in 2021, there are dozens of states putting together anti-transgender legislation, and a subgroup of the Republican Party sees transgender issues as their best way of pushing their agenda in the next election cycle. Have you seen what just happened in Arkansas? Even during a global pandemic, violence against marginalized people is escalating rapidly. The income gap is widening, which will only continue to negatively impact a population that already struggles with underemployment. The Supreme Court is likely to overturn some of our hard-fought victories. Voter suppression laws are going into effect across the United States. We as a community need to recognize our differences and what some of us have to face every day, but none of us should have to face.
The community at the moment is divided. You know, we're all on the same team, but we're finding more things to fall out over than ever before.
We have to listen to things which are said which are uncomfortable.
Treat us the way you want people to treat you, and stand with us the way we stand with you, and include us the way you want to be included.
One quote that I always think of is, if one of us isn't free, none of us are. Remember your history. Remember the fight that you had to fight, and realize that that's happening to people within your own community. You.
Me.
Us.
We. You. Me. Us. We. You. Me. Us. We. You. Me. Us. We.
The community at the
Lindsay.
Sorry. So that was London Pride's promotional video for that they released in February, and we think that it kind of perfectly encapsulates the momentum that is behind the changes happening in our community.
So first we ask, what groups are represented at Pride? What groups are celebrated at Pride? What groups does Pride cater to? When you plan your Pride events, who do you think about? Meanwhile, who's not being reached at Pride? Parents? Older folks? teens and young adults in crisis? Families. Guess what? We have children. Queer, bi people of color. Differently abled folks. What if we decide to create a space that allows for meaningful community and connection, even if the parade has to be a little bit smaller? Maybe we could look at how to make our community better rather than a day of flaunting the privileges some of us have gained. What could this type of pride look like? Well, for starters, we could close off a couple blocks of the street, the same way we already do for our parades, but rethink how we use the space. How about vendors?
You can invite local artists and local businesses to set up and not only contribute to the local economy, but also build inter-community relationships. But there's also an opportunity for a different kind of vendor space, specifically meant to be family friendly and supporting a mission to strengthen and better the lives of our community members.
Maybe some organizations who need to get their names out there to offer their services. Family planning organizations, mental health organizations, companies that are truly LGBT friendly and are looking to hire. Educators, people who are willing to talk about LGBT history, PFLAG, GSAs in your area. Search out queer-friendly people to fill your vendor booths rather than just putting it out to the highest bidder. If we stop and look at it, we can make this into something that supports the mental health of our community rather than glamorizing behaviors that are detrimental to that mental health. It's time to change the way our community is seen today and change the statistics that our community will face in the future. What about providing voter registration booths and real political awareness?
Democracy is not a guarantee, and we need to help create an educated and politically active community. NERP is lucky to be in a very progressive part of the country and part of the world. We are lucky, but not all people in this world or even this country are as lucky as we are. We need to honor the political danger of our siblings are in by actively encouraging participation to secure our future. And the biggest thing we can do to secure a more positive future for our community is to remember that our future is what it always is, the next generation.
Just for fun, we looked up the websites of member organizations of NERP and did a word search for youth. You know, hit Control F, type in youth. We weren't expecting much, and yet we were still disappointed. When you have a few minutes, you might want to look at your own organization's website and see how many times that word shows up. Or then again, you might already know the answer. What do we know about the youth in our community? The number of LGBTQIA plus youth has gone from 1 in 10 to 1 in 6, or from 10% to 17% of the population. Young adults are 3 times more likely to identify as queer than the current generation of people who are planning Pride. And you need to know this. They're a lot more aware and concerned about the social and economic issues that are facing us than those of us who forget what our privilege is. People like to talk about cancel culture. Well, this next generation of queer folks are going to put an awful lot of what we believe in right up on their cancel culture chopping block.
So the question is, who are these people, the young folks? They're less and less concerned with the binary. They're not hung up on labels like you might think. They're not interested in exclusionary events. They're more gender nonconforming, and they are more gender fluid.
And what do they have to deal with? More anti-transgender legislation in 2021 than any other year. Increased violence, intolerance, and white supremacy. Pressure to conform to someone else's standard, even within our own community.
And what do they need? They need positive body image messaging. They need positive role models. They need acceptance of color. They need safety. They need counseling. They need a sense of belonging. They need housing. They need support. They need to know that it gets better. They need to know that they have a future. They need a sense of community. and they need to have their identities validated.
How does it feel to be a young person going to Pride? They're excited and they love the party atmosphere. Yeah, but they're also overwhelmed, lost, confused. They're excited and hopeful. They're looking for people who are like them. They're looking for role models. They're looking for a roadmap for their future. When they look at Pride, it's a message to them, telling them what their future is. They want to find out more about themselves. Many of them are not secure in their identity. Many are not out. Many are just coming out. Many might not be out to their family, and they're looking for us for guidance on how to go about doing that. They're like clay, and we have the responsibility and the opportunity to shape that clay.
What message do our Pride events send to them? How important is it for our youth to have a positive experience at their first Pride? If your experiences from Pride are that being out is one big party, what happens when you find out how difficult it can be just trying to live your authentic life in the world? If your experience at Pride is that idealistic body types are fetishized, how do you feel about your imperfect body? Research shows that beginning as early as 12, gay, lesbian, and bisexual teens are at higher risk of binge eating and purging than their heterosexual peers. Transgender youth are 4 times more likely to suffer from an eating disorder than cisgender youth. If your experiences at Pride are centered around alcohol, how will that shape your vision not only of the community, but of your own future? Up to 25% of the general LGBTQ community has moderate alcohol dependency compared to 5 to 10% of the general population. And we will repeat.
Up to 25% of the general LGBTQ community has moderate alcohol dependency compared to 5 to 10% of the general population. Are our Pride events telling our youth that if they want to be in our community, then they need to become dependent on alcohol? Is that the message we're sending? Is that the message we want to be sending? Well, what can we do about it? We need to make Pride more inclusive, just like Sylvia Rivera said in 1973. Just like the video we showed from London Pride. No one should ever feel forgotten or overlooked at Pride. We need to focus on the transgender and gender nonconforming in our community. We need them to have a seat at the table and a place on the stage. We need to focus on queer, BIPOC, and AAPI people. We need to create space for the weird ones. Actively search out those who don't fit into our categories, and then either redefine our categories to include them or dispense with our categories altogether. We need to rethink the focus of our message. We don't party all the time. We don't want the straight community to think that we do. And we don't want people who are exploring their own identity to think that we do either. We need to think about what we can offer at Pride other than music, rainbows, extra short shorts, and shirtless dancing. We should look at how we can help our community. And guess what? We should also look at how we can help those who aren't part of our community. It shouldn't be a requirement that somebody identify as queer in order to be able to visit the Planned Parenthood booth at our Pride events. We need to think about what it means to be proud. We should offer the kind of event that no one would ever be ashamed of attending, especially if someone who was using that event to come out to their friends and family. If I was 12 and trying to explain my queerness to my family, would I want to show them half-naked drunk people making balloons out of condoms? Personally, no, but you never met my parents, and that's a long story. Being ashamed to be discovered attending the parade is quite literally the opposite of pride. During this morning's keynote speech, one of the attendees said that the people in their community are worried about what it would be like to have pride in their community. That shouldn't be what we're doing. We shouldn't be putting on the kind of a pride that makes the community scared of what we're going to do. What should pride be doing for our youth? We need to be giving them life skills to succeed in their future. We need to be giving them what we didn't have at that age. A friend of mine recently told me, I never had the representation I needed at a young age to know that I could and would be okay, and that I wasn't alone. So I decided to be that person. They shouldn't have to be the ones to lead. We should be there for them. We need to be listening to them and understanding them rather than telling them. We need to be providing them with the resources that we know are available, but they don't. Many of our gabies, babies, and translings are only aware of the fact that they don't fit the mold that society says they should fit, and their families have no idea what to do about it. And they're looking to us for answers.
We are closely involved with queer youth. We run a monthly youth group, even through the pandemic, and we've had several years of closely mentoring youth. We've had members that have spent one Sunday a month with us for the past 4 or 5 years of their teenage lives. And asking some of our members how they've experienced other youth prides, their opinion is that generally they are age-specific versions of an older pride, and they can feel overwhelmed and intimidated. That there are some places to do your makeup and stuff, but that they generally wish that there was more to learn and information to get. We have witnessed the confidence and self-worth that real support and recognition can have when the time is taken to give it. And even though pride happens for only one day, we shouldn't limit our abilities to change lives, because we've seen it happen in a day. 2019 was our last in-person event for Youth Pride. We created Youth Pride with games, food, giveaways, a dance party, but most importantly and impactfully, we provided life skills. We wanted to provide for the mental well-being of our kids, but focused heavily on providing opportunities for kids to have gender-affirming experiences. And so in addition to counseling services, LGBT history, we had hair care, tie-tying lessons, information about bindings, skincare, nail care, makeup lessons with Sephora, and contouring and glitter beards with drag kings. There was one kid I remember specifically. I was standing in the room with all the booths, where all the booths were set up, and a man walked over to me and started talking to me about his foster son, who was trans and going through a pretty hard time and struggling with depression. He seemed unsure of what to do exactly, and I asked for him to introduce me to his foster son. So I smiled at the quiet 12-year-old who seemed more interested in studying the carpet than making eye contact with me. And I walked them around the Youth Pride area, explaining everything that was going on and in a tone of encouragement and excitement. And I ended up at a table of youth group members, and I introduced them, and I left them there and entrusted the kids to be hospitable, which they were. Several hours later, I think about how he looked when he first got there, and then how he looked when I saw him running, like following a bunch of kids, and he had a trans flag like on around his neck, and he had a tie on, and he had a glitter beard, and he was smiling, and he just, waved at me, and just like, it was a complete transformation within hours. Yeah, it makes me a little emotional. The point is that, we gave a queer youth what he really needed, and it was his first experience with our community, and that was meaningful to him. When queer kids are trying to find themselves, it's important that we cannot put them in an environment to be lost.
If that isn't enough to convince you to be more thoughtful, you may ask, what's in it for us? How does providing for youth benefit pride organizers? Well, for starters, we aren't going to be here forever. Those youth out there will be replacing us eventually. They'll be the ones designing pride celebrations and running LGBTQIA+ organizations. Our very relevance depends on them, depends on us understanding them, expanding our understanding, and our outreach.
We see queer bars and spaces shutting down faster than ever, but maybe it's because we aren't engaging the community members in the way that they feel supported or represented. If we spend time at Pride showing young people how the community can actively benefit and provide for them in ways that are specific and special, then maybe they will seek out being a part of the community more. I saw that boy from Pride at the very next youth group meeting, and they had gotten their first short haircut by the next time I saw them. If we hadn't given them that positive support, we might not have given them a reason to join us past our Pride celebration. I will say that 2 of our youth group members have now become youth group facilitators. And so in their late teens and early 20s, they want to volunteer with us now, which is amazing. The point is that any gay, in the Northeast, any gay person can feel relatively safe getting drunk anywhere. In the major perception of our community is that we provide an opportunity to party. Then what is the incentive of traveling specifically to a queer space when they do the same destructive behavior anywhere? And is that actual progress? I don't want to lose my queer spaces, but I also want my queer spaces to be able to contribute to my overall well-being as well as my social life. When we begin to focus on different priorities, prides will attract different sets of finances. I am not naive that all of this would be impossible without money and finances, but as an organization, for outCT, our youth group and youth activities raise the most attention and money every year. I understand young people don't have a lot of money to spend, but companies and people are inspired by young people and are quick to support the well-being of young people.
And how will this change the future of our community? Being seen as more than just party animals will strengthen our position in our local towns and cities. Being seen as responsible members of the neighborhood will make us less likely to be the victims of hate crimes. Presenting better role models and better representation will improve our collective mental health. It will decrease family rejection and thereby decrease homelessness. In short, it will make our community better and healthier. In the end, it's up to each of us to decide whether we want our pride to look more like Mardi Gras or more like the Trevor Project.
If we change some of what we provide for our community to be more helpful, we can change the future of our community to be more hopeful. We are an organization of dedicated individuals. We wouldn't all be here today and have been involved for years doing what we do if that weren't true. We are here because we want to provide the best Pride celebration possible, and with thoughtful consideration, we can be providing better Pride celebrations for all of our members, especially our youth. We can try to give our community as much hope as we tell them to be hopeful.
As Lindsay said, we have a vision that Pride can remain the fabulous celebration that it is today, while still returning to its roots as a protest, becoming more inclusive, and helping meet the needs of the queer community. We want you to have that vision with us and to dream of what Pride can be if we're all willing to be a part of it together.
I think we all need a pep talk. I don't know everything, I'm just a kid. But I do know this. The world's so big, and the world's so small. Sometimes it feels like we can't do anything at all. But the world can be better in spite of its flaws. The world can be better, and you'll be the cause. You'll be the cause. You'll be the cause. The world can be better, and you'll be the cause. It's like people, you got air coming through your nose. You got a heartbeat. That means it's time to do something. It's everybody's duty to give the world a reason to dance. This is your time. This is our time. Let's live in a world with more high fives. Even though the waves are bigger in our bones, the wind keeps us sailing. It's what gives us hope. Some days it's dark, but we'll keep going. 'Cause people like you whisper, keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. People like you whisper, keep going, keep going, keep going. If Michael Jordan had quit, he would have never made Space Jam. And I love Space Jam. I love Space Jam. What will be your Space Jam? What will you create? Will make the world awesome. Nothing if you keep sitting there. We got work to do, so get to it. The world's so big, and the world's so small. Sometimes it feels like we can't do anything at all. But the world can be better in spite of its flaws. The world can be better, and you'll be the cause. You'll be the cause. You'll be the cause. The world can be better, and you'll be the cause. Too rough, diversion was, and I took the road less traveled. It hurt, man! Not cool, Robert Frost, but was there were too fast. I won't be the one that leads to awesome. Like Journey said, don't stop believing. Unless you dream stupid, then you should get a better dream. The world's so big, and the world's so small. Sometimes it feels like we can't do anything at all. But the world can be better in spite of its flaws. The world can be better, and you'll be the cause. You'll be the cause. You'll be the cause. The world can be better, and you'll be the cause. Even though the waves are bigger than our boats, the wind keeps us sailing. Its love gives us hope. Some days it's dark, but we'll keep going. 'Cause people like you whisper, keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. People like you whisper, keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. People like you whisper, keep going, keep going, keep going. People like you whisper, keep going, keep going, keep going.
And yep, that's the end of this for us. Thank you so much for having Polly and I, and thank you to Simone and Christopher for being our interpreters today. And
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Next session starts in 15 minutes, so y'all get a break and we'll see you soon.